Hello, my name's Duncan and welcome to Back to Books and Back Away from the Donkey. It's been a bit of a while since I've sort of sat here and done a video. Just life and stuff, and trying to get my momentum back to recording videos. I've been trying to record this one for probably 3 or 4 days, but also I got caught up in a video that is actually going to be coming out on Wednesday, which is about Star Surgeon, the Alan Morse book and the James White book, and I ended up doing far more editing than I normally would be. And yes, that's sort of got a bit out of hand, but that's coming out on Wednesday. But I just wanted to do a normal sort of pick and mix. If you can hear a weird licky noise, that is Myka my Labrador, who's down there deciding to totally lick her arm. Her paw, so I don't know what she's doing. Hopefully you can't hear that too much. But yeah, so here I am. A few things to talk about. I've even got myself a little list. A bit on an old envelope. And I've got myself a drink. On my gremlins mug. Yeah, so my reading's not been particularly fast or exciting recently. I have just finished, well, I finished last week, The Year of the Quiet Sun, which I've mentioned before, with this beautiful Peter Elson cover. I'm going to do a full video on that. I'm going to start recording it this week, so hopefully it's come out next week, because spoilers, I think it's a masterpiece. I really do. So yeah, so I'm reading that. I'm also reading a couple of random zombie easy to read books. And the other thing I've decided to, because The Year of the Quiet Sun is not a difficult read, it's just quite heavy in its content. So I went to read Raymond Feist and William Fortescue's Honoured Enemy, which is one of the Rift War books. I've been slowly rereading my Raymond Feist books over the past year or two. In the Rift War books, I think there's 30 odd books, because that's about number 15. So every now and then I pick one up, because I really do like the books. My first one obviously is Magician, which I think in the States was published as Magician Apprentice and Magician Master, as in 2 books. There's a later version of that book which has got added stuff into it. If you're going to read it, I suggest you don't read the one with the added stuff in it, because it just makes it a bit baggy and stuff. But anyway, yes, so I'm reading Honoured Enemy, which is, if I've got to scratch myself, which I think is about book 15. And these were 3 books which are go back in time to actually when Magician was taking place and cover that area. Before this, there was a couple of books that were basically based on video games. They weren't bad, but they weren't as good as the rest of his stuff. But I'm quite enjoying that. So how far into it am I? That's page 65. This is a battered library edition that I managed to get hold of. So because I normally go for mass market paperbacks, but I really like that. I've probably been waving this around in the camera too much, but hey ho. I'll take another sip of drink. Actually, it's quite weird talking. If hopefully the light is okay, because this is late in the evening, and I normally record in the mornings when there's better light coming into this room. So I've sort of done my winter filming thing, which means I've got a light over there and a light down there to hopefully give enough light to shoot anything, so people can see anything. If it sounds like I'm rambling a lot, I feel like I'm rambling a lot, because I've just getting back in the flow. Hey Myka. So yeah. Also around here, I think part of the reason I struggled is I don't do change well, and I live in a end of a close, and there's about 6 or 7 houses, all wheelchair adapted, and literally in the past 6 weeks 2 people have died in this area and are moving out. So we've got new people going to be moving in. Oh, shaking of a Labrador. And mentally I find that quite difficult, because and what's a shame is because of where the funeral was of one of the gentlemen who died, I couldn't actually go to it, which is a bit of a shame. Hello Myka. I know. Sorry. Excuse the snorting. But yes, but enough of my personal stuff. You're just here for the books, aren't you? So yeah, I popped out on Friday with my wife in the wheelchair, and it amazes me how somebody in a huge powered wheelchair can be invisible, but she seems to be. But that's another conversation. But we popped into the library because we wanted to pick up some books on some sewing and stuff. And on the way out of the library, they had a shelf of books free to take away. And I found in that shelf some books by a guy called Douglas Reeman, which I love the covers, A Ship Must Die, A Prayer for the Ship, and Strike from the Sea. I'd not heard of this guy, and I thought they were just some books in sort of the vein of Sven Hassel. If anybody knows, Sven Hassel used to produce loads and loads of books. But I had a brief look into it, and he was quite a prolific author. These were 1970s ones, and in the front of this book, I think there is, check, 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. There's about 15 books in this series. The first one is The Ship Must Die. This was published in 58. And I had a brief look online, and this guy he served in the Navy, obviously in the war. And then he left there, and he actually left there after the Second World War, started writing. He actually rejoined when the Korean War came upon, and he was a reserve. I think he ended up being a lieutenant colonel. So he knew his Navy stuff. And so he published this set of books, which were all based. This first one says 1944, but he also did a book under a pseudonym, which I can't remember off the top of my head, which were Napoleonic Wars, based around Napoleonic Wars, that seemed to have good stuff. So actually these books I thought could be quite, not particularly brilliant, might actually be better than I thought they were. Don't know when I'm going to get around to reading them, but I'm quite intrigued. And if anybody out there has read any Douglas Reeman, I'm intrigued. But if you know how random my reading is, you never know when I could pick one of those up. Just going to take another sip of drink. And a couple of things I was going to mention a couple of things I've seen on YouTube in the past week when I've been randomly trying to edit this bloody video that's coming out on Wednesday. Because there's been a couple of quite interesting videos. I'll start off with, if you don't subscribe to Bob's Books, she's a science fiction fan, but she does a lot of reselling. I think she lives in San Diego area, so she sells a lot of stuff on. But there's a huge book video on a huge lump of books that she got, and a lot of them I think she's going to sell, because so if you're in America, you might be able to pick those up. But some really interesting books. She picked up a bunch of, so I'm just looking down here what I wrote down, a bunch of Kim Stanley Robinson books, which are really good. Some Brian Aldiss, a John Crowley book that was actually signed, and it was just really quite interesting, the amount of books that she picked up. I'm going to put a link to the video below, actually. And if you've not seen that, some of the books she picks up are quite interesting. Me, as a person living in Scotland, makes it more interesting, because obviously she gets some US covers, especially for the old books, which I find quite interesting, because obviously in her thing she found the for some reason she had the UK cover for Brian Aldiss' Helicon of Winter, which are brilliant covers, which I've got copies of, which I love. But it's quite a video. It's about 30 minutes long, but it's worth going through it just to have a look at just some really interesting books she managed to pick up. And that's Bob's Books, and I said I'll put the link to that below. The other interesting things I saw this week was there was Roy from Roy Reads Everything. Roy Reads Anything, or it used to be a Yard of Random Books, which I love that name of that channel, but I understand why he changed it. He did a video on books that he would keep for the rest of his life, and that was Conan books. And he was on them, but not the Robert Howard ones, the Lesprad de Camp and Encarta ones, which I found really quite interesting, because my first exposure to Conan was through the Robert Jordan ones, which I've got copies of back there. And then I read the Lesprad de Camp. He did the movie adaptation from Schwarzenegger's Conan film, which is just a stunning film, best sort of fantasy film ever done, as far as I'm concerned. Just worth it for Basil Padoris's score. But yeah, so that was my exposure to Conan before, and I read more of those I had than the original books. I'm back. Sorry, I think I got confused there. Yeah, my original exposure to Conan was by the Robert Jordan books. I think I might say Robert Howard earlier, but I'm going to correct that in the edit. So if it doesn't look like I'm saying that, it's because I'm just put a weird cut here. So it was Robert Jordan, and then I said the Douglas Reeman movie adaptation of Conan. The Robert Howard original books I didn't read for years. So to me, when I think Conan, weirdly, I think Robert Jordan. I do think that Roy did a really good way of going through them about the pastiches. I must admit, I do hate the term pastiche, because to me, I feel like it's almost used in a derogatory way, not by Roy, but by some people when they go on about it, because I think sometimes the Lasprad de Camp and Encarta books are looked down on, which I don't think they should be. It's the same way like the William, if you look at William Burroughs' Tarzan books, quite a few people have published different Tarzan books. Even people like Philip Jose Farmer has done Tarzan books, who's a great writer. So I don't think you should always look down at the pastiche ones. But yeah, it's a great video. I'm going to put a link to it below, because it's quite interesting. It got me thinking about what books that I would always keep. I've got a bunch of stuff that I've had since I was a kid, which I'd obviously keep, but I couldn't. Probably my Lord of the Rings ones. But it's got me really thinking. I'm trying to think if there's a specific set that I would, you know, if my house was on fire, I would grab. So I'm going to have a little bit of think about that. There's one other video I'm going to talk about in a second, but I was going to say it's in September, I think it's the 24th of September, day before my birthday, last year was when I released my first BookTube video. So as everybody, I've got to do some sort of celebration, some video or something. So any suggestions, please let me know. And I've got a few ideas of stuff I might do. I'm obviously going to do the anniversary tag, but I've got a couple of other videos that I'm thinking of might pre-record and put out, or I don't know, questions, live stream, don't know, suggestions, greatly received. I may take them on, I may not. Or just send me pictures of your dogs, I don't know. But yeah, we get another sip for the final one. Okay, the final bit in this short video was Al over Big Al Does BookTube released a video on his update one about reading events and about how he was cutting back on them because it was affecting what he wanted and planned to read this year, which I found quite interesting, because I've mentioned before I struggle with reading events. I'm technically doing Star Trek, but I've done sort of the Star Trek one, but I've done one book a month because I struggle with them. Partly is the way I read and the way I pick books. I sort of vaguely plan what I'm going to read, and I change my mind, look at a bookshelf and think, no, I'll grab that book instead. But also it's because it feels to me sometimes that with some events, it almost feels almost like competitive reading, and that's not why I read. I read because I love to read, and I enjoy reading, and I enjoy reading new things. I enjoy reading stuff I've read before, and the reason I'm on filming these videos is because I like to share that with people, and I enjoy making these videos, and me talking about it makes me think about what I've read a bit more as well. The same way that writing on my blog, which I do, makes me think about all the stuff a bit more. So it's a really interesting video, and the way Al was going on about him cutting back just so he can make sure he gets through what he wants to, and it also affects people like, I'm not the fastest reader in the world, I don't think Al is either, so if you're not going to biggest reader, you want to make sure you get through one. So if you get involved in all these events, it ends up, if you read one book a week and you get involved in a couple of BookTube events, it means that all your reading is taken up with these events, so you don't get time for anything else. Unless you're a Steve Donahue who reads numerous books a day for a living, you're going to get caught up in this, and that's where it can be problematic. I'm not saying don't go into BookTube events, but because some of them are great, but it's just always a thing worth thinking about. So, yeah, Al's video is really quite interesting the way he puts it across. So I'm going to put a link down the bottom to that, so you can have a look at that if you want. Was that the last one I wanted to talk about? Yep, my piece of paper. So that's about it. Yeah, so tomorrow, because I'm hopefully releasing this on Tuesday, if it's any earlier or later, the video's already there, is my video on Star Surgeon is out. I'm hoping that I might be able to get a video later in the week, but if not, I'm aiming to record the one on the Quiet Sun later on this week to hopefully aim it out for middle of next week. I might aim to try and get videos like that on Wednesdays, but I'm not guaranteeing anything because I don't know what I'm doing half the time. Hello, Myka. My Labrador's trying to tell me something, aren't you, girlie? You're trying to tell me something, girl. And it's very wet and dreary outside, so, but it's still quite warm. Anyway, I will speak to you all very soon, and I'll speak to you all very soon, and more shaking. And bye-bye then. I don't know how to finish this. I really don't know how to finish this video. I've actually got a new idea about how to finish some videos, but I'm going to keep that under wraps. It's almost an idea stolen off Roy, but I've got an idea. But anyway, I'm going to go now, and I will speak to you all very soon. Bye-bye.